Hello, and welcome to my first video tutorial. My name is Angela, and today I'd like to share my workflow for exporting photos from Lightroom to Aurora HDR. Aurora gives us several ways to get photos into their software, but I found a lack of resources online outlining the pros and cons of each method. I ended up doing a lot of trial and error research to come up with my workflow. The process in this video gives me clean, consistent results, so I thought I'd share my techniques in hopes of saving you the hassle. Let's get started. We're going to be working with 6 frames that I shot in La Jolla, California of a lifeguard stand. And right now I'm starting out in Lightroom in the library module. I have already imported my photos, so what we're going to do is go ahead and select those photos. I just click on the first one, hold down the shift key, and click the last one to select all of them. And then we're going to move into the develop module. The first thing we're going to do is click the reset button to make sure no changes have been made to these photos. I want to have them just as they were straight out of the camera. And then what we're going to do is make sure that any of the default settings that Lightroom applies, we're going to remove those as well. So we go ahead and we go through the basic panel here and make sure these are all set to 0. We click down to the detail panel and we remove the sharpening and we remove the color noise reduction. And then we go down to lens correction, and I prefer to go ahead and enable my profile corrections, and what this does is correct for any distortion in your lens and remove the chromatic aberration. So those are the basic settings. I have actually put together a preset, as you can see over here, Prep for Aurora HDR, that includes all of those settings, and I'm giving that away free as part of this blog post. Once you've implemented those settings, what you also might want to do is go back up here to the basic panel and adjust your white balance. I'm going to go ahead on this one and try daylight. Takes a little bit of the yellow out of it. Maybe cloudy. I like that better. That's a little bit more color for a sunset. And then the other thing I'm going to do is do a little bit of cropping and straightening. So I'm clicking my crop tool. I'm going to do the lights out, which is the L command keyboard shortcut in Lightroom, and that just takes the rest of your screen black, which is kind of convenient. And I'm going to just straighten out my horizon, and then I'm going to crop this in a little bit. I think that's a little bit more pleasing of a composition right there. So then go ahead and hit enter and hit the L key again, and it brings that back. And now that I have all of those settings made to my median exposure, I'm going to go ahead and synchronize that across all 6 frames. So I go ahead and hit sync here in the bottom right corner, check all, and synchronize. Then all of those settings, including the crop, get synced between all 6 photos. The next thing we're going to do is right click on your set of photos and go to export, and you have 2 options here for Aurora HDR Pro. You can open the original images, or you can use TIFF with Lightroom adjusters. I prefer to use TIFF with Lightroom adjusters because all of those settings that I just made are now will be embedded in those files, and I actually find that I come up with a better, cleaner result. So we'll go ahead and say use TIFF. We'll wait for Lightroom to export those to Aurora. And then the first menu that Aurora gives us shows our 6 frames. I usually click alignment even if I shot on a tripod, because sometimes even just the slightest little bump of a tripod, or maybe you tugged on your cable release and it moved the camera just a tiny bit, I go ahead and check alignment even if I'm on a tripod. Ghost reduction, that's really only important if something in your photo is moving, and in this case we have moving clouds, we have moving water, so I'm going to go ahead and check yes. And then chromatic aberration reduction, I almost always check this. I don't know of any reason why you wouldn't. I don't know if there's any downside to doing this. So then we go ahead and say create HDR, and then it asks you which reference image you want to use for your ghost reduction. On this one, I want to use the median exposure here, which is going to be my first one. And unfortunately, my EV values are not showing in this particular export for some reason. But in this case, it's the first one of the set. And you can click through and it'll show you a preview, and you can figure out which one was your median exposure. And on this, I'm going to go ahead and put it to low. The reason you don't want to add too much ghost reduction if you don't have to is it can degrade the quality of the photo. Your shadow or highlights areas may be compromised if there were movement in those areas. So I'm going to go ahead and say low and then create HDR. Now we sit and wait. With 6 frames on a pretty high megapixel camera, it can take a little while. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and I'll meet you back here in a couple of minutes. All right, there we go. Our image has been tone mapped and already it looks pretty darn good. The default goes to one of the realistic presets, and down here in the right hand corner under presets I have the realistic HDR selected. That's where I like to spend most of my time, but where you go from here is completely up to you and your artistic vision. You have, I think, hundreds of presets that you can choose from, and then you can always go through the sliders and make it your own. So have fun. I hope this was helpful. Have a great day.